Hello there. I'm recording this through a camera. Whoa! I got this mirror set up so I can see. Because, the front part of the camera is better than the back. Or what? The facing face-facing camera is not as good as the front one. So I'm using the front one with a mirror. Anyway, and the reason I'm using my phone is sort of part of the discussion today because computer issues. But what is this thing with my hair in the back? Does this weird thing. Need a haircut. Anyway, yeah, I have some issues with tech. I'll just talk about that because, yeah, not that anyone cares, but I think, so I started programming like 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And I thought that, technology problems were always annoying, like the blue screen of death and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that if I became a programmer or if I learned programming, that I would become more tolerant of those kinds of things, more understanding, like, oh yeah. Because, everyone writes bugs. Everyone makes mistakes. I do too. And so I thought I would become more tolerant of that sort of thing. It's totally the opposite. I'm 100 times less tolerant. When it comes, like, if it's a small project that has a bug, if it's one person little hobby project, like I'm not intolerant of that. That's totally understandable. But big companies like Google, Microsoft, and Apple, I'm very intolerant. And like one of the things that bothers me is pop-ups. We'll get to that. But I guess maybe the best way to describe my problem with these companies, there's a lot. There's so much to talk about that I could never get into one video, but maybe the best example is this attitude that they would maybe, for example, they'll have an update that installs some new software without asking you if you want that software. An example I think is Copilot, right? Like, did they change Cortana to Copilot? I don't know. But like both of these things are stuff that I never wanted on my system. That's Microsoft stuff. But like in the beginning, you could have just asked me, hey, do you want Cortana on your system? I would just check no. That would be the end of it. That would be nice. But it's like, and maybe you can deactivate it, right? I don't know. But I don't want to be, like, you can constantly be going into the Windows settings and try to, desuckify it, make it suck less, which, turn off, I don't know, like even just the whole automatic updates thing, right? You can try to avoid that, but people say like eventually, the thing is like things are always changing. And there's always something new that you have to switch off or try to. And I don't want to spend time on that either. Like constantly researching how to debloat. People talk about using Windows 11 and to like have a debloated version of it. And but people are like, well, at some point Windows will install an update, and then like things might break, or you have to do everything again. And I don't want to dabble in that stuff. Now, if it's an easy option, easy fix, like one of the things that slightly annoyed me was in the search bar. Now, this is not just about Windows, this is all kinds of stuff. But anyway, but the search bar in Windows, they started putting like little graphics, cute little graphics. And it's just like, I don't like those distracting, new, annoying things, especially things that change with time. It's distracting, I think a lot, and I don't like these random distractions. I don't like phone calls. For years, I didn't have a phone for that very reason. I tried to avoid that kind of stuff. I always have my notifications. I never use notifications. Like it's, my mother doesn't have my phone number because she doesn't have the patience to not call me unless it's truly an emergency. So and she's demonstrated that, so she doesn't have my phone number. So stuff like that. Like I don't like these interruptions, and they make little changes. And so, like, I mean, an example with iPhone. iPhone is maybe not as bad. We'll get to that, but like they made a change where now there's like a game mode. So every time I load up the chess.com app, it says game mode off, because at first it was game mode on, and then I looked in the settings and I switched it off, and it's like, I don't need the pop-up. Now you have a pop-up. I'm doing stuff, I'm thinking about something, and I'm like, I just pull up a little chess and I get a pop-up. It's always distracting. It's an interruption from routine. And so now I think I'll get used to that, because after seeing something hundreds of times, your brain sort of filters it out. So I'm trying to just say, like, okay, whatever, I'll get used to it. So anyway, so pop-ups. So I had this Razer mouse. I had a Razer mouse, Razer keyboard. This was probably the worst example, because the mouse, I'm just gonna wing it. I'm gonna stop holding up this mirror to try to see myself. Gonna hold it like this. I need some kind of reflection, actually. Can I go like this? Okay, now I'm sitting down. Yeah, so anyway, kind of impromptu. Again, my recording setup, normal setup, doesn't work right now. But anyway, so the Razer mouse, they used to install updates, and at first I was like, what do you need an update for on a mouse? That's weird. Razer has this weird software, I forget what it's called, but then like they started doing more and more stuff with it. Like, I think you can actually purchase games through it, maybe. But they have a lot of software associated with the mouse. They actually do a weird trick to install that software, because a mouse normally doesn't install a bunch of software. I mean, I guess it would, it'd have its own drivers potentially, but what it does is when you plug in a Razer mouse for the first time, it pretends to be a keyboard through the USB and does some keyboard commands, so that then it can install drivers. I'm presume it's using the internet and installing the latest drivers, and all of that is just creepy, right? This Chinese company, the fact that it's a Chinese company doesn't make it any better. I'm sorry. It's creepy stuff, downloading from the internet, downloading updates, but it's part of it is the main thing that they're doing. I don't think they're updating the mouse drivers in any meaningful way. Like, it's a mouse. They know how they know how to have the mouse driver was probably fine from the beginning. No, they're updating their crappy software, and sorry, I forget what it's called, but you can find it on your system. And actually, so if you remove it, the next time the mouse will see that it was removed and reinstall it. So you can't just remove the folder, you leave the folder empty, right? I guess is what people do, but I just don't trust it. But so, like, after I realized that, I'm like, okay, I'm never buying a Razer product again. I don't want my mouse updating. It just creeps me out. No, like installing stuff from the internet, I don't want that from a mouse. I don't want it from a keyboard either. It's just weird to me. And NVIDIA with the graphics card, they have some weird stuff going on too, but I give them more of a pass because it's a graphics card and it's more essential to the computer. Also, there's not many alternatives. There's only a couple of options for the graphics card. So, I don't know about what NVIDIA is doing there. But okay, so Razer. So I was already like, you know what, I'm never buying Razer products ever again, because this creeps me out. I don't like it. And the pop-up would come up, like installing updates for the mouse. Like, is the keyboard going to do that, and the display, and like everything you have plugged in through USB into the computer, are they all going to have updates and pop-ups? So it's just like, it's a mess. And then one day they basically started doing what I consider advertising through those pop-ups. And so they had some kind of like contest going on with like a multi-million-dollar prize pool, and they wanted to notify me about that. To me, that's an ad. So this pop-up comes up with an ad, and this was after an update. So I saw one day like, oh, mouse installing update again, great. And, and after I restarted the computer, maybe the next day, then this advertisement came up as a pop-up in the corner of the screen saying, hey, there's this prize pool, esports thing going on. And I ripped the mouse out. And 10 minutes later, I was smashing it with a hammer because it's dead to me. You do not, it is so unacceptable that a peripheral device like a mouse or keyboard is going to be advertising on my screen space. That's right out. That is so crossing the line. I was so done with it. And I took all my Razer products. I had a keyboard and 2 mice, destroyed them, done. They're dead to me. Never, ever, ever buy. And now I have to be careful. I have to be careful buying mouses and keyboards because they might install crap on my system. It's disgusting. But now, lately, Windows was doing a similar kind of thing. At some point, I installed the Opera browser. I like having multiple browsers, one for my personal stuff, if I'm going to, look at my email and my bank stuff, and one that I use in streaming. And then I don't want to get too much into the details, but it became useful to have a third browser, just for the, to be logged into YouTube. Like sometimes I need to do moderation or I want to check the analytics, and to log into YouTube, I have to be logged into some kind of email for it, right? So I wanted to keep that separate so that if I'm streaming chess or whatever on my computer, I have a browser. I use Chrome, so I use Firefox for my personal stuff. I use Chrome for, playing chess while I'm streaming or whatever the stream is. And then I would have Opera as the third one, where I can see my analytics data, and I have to be logged in for email there. So I just don't want to leak, email addresses and stuff like that. But then sometimes people talk about YouTube and how it's going with the channel. So I want to show on the screen the analytics data. So anyway, it's complicated details, but it was useful to have 3 browsers. Now, I don't know if installing Opera, this started changing after installing Opera, and I don't know if it has anything to do with it or not. Maybe not. But Windows started asking me if I am interested in Xbox Live or whatever. And it's I owned the original Xbox back in the day. I owned an Xbox 360 also. So I don't need a reminder about Xbox. Okay, I have a Switch and a PS5. It's if I want to think about Xbox, I'll think about Xbox. I don't need a freaking pop-up. And that's what happens. So they started putting in a pop-up. And the further annoying thing is that these changes are implemented, right, without asking you. So even if you have your system set up in a way that you're happy with, momentarily you might be happy with your setup for a while. Then they start implementing new garbage. And to me, this is, again, an advertisement. They're advertising their Xbox crap. And I don't want it in my personal space. You're coming into my personal space with an ad. This is my home. The screen is here in my home. You're coming into my home with an ad, and without my permission, on software that I paid for. I paid for the Windows key or whatever. And nope, that's pretty much a deal breaker for me. Because I recently, I don't know how deep we want to go in this. It's Windows, when I was a teenager, I had a Windows. I was playing Half-Life and Counter-Strike and all this stuff. And back in those days, Windows was very unreliable. I mean, over the years, I had, you'd buy a new computer every few years. So I'm sure I had experience with 3 or 4, going all the way back to Windows 3.1, then Windows 95, Windows XP. And the experience was very unreliable. The blue screen of death. We had to call the computer guy to come and fix things many times. So it was a bad experience back then. And at some point around 19 or 20, I bought a MacBook, and it was much more reliable, many less problems. Now, Apple, Mac, they have different, a lot. That's a whole other video of stuff I could complain about, but they are more reliable, and they should be, because they're designing their hardware as well. So it's cohesive. From their point of view, their project is very cohesive. They're doing hardware and software, and it had better work together properly, right? What Windows is doing is perhaps more complicated. I don't think they get a pass for that, though. But anyway, so the experience was more reliable. And at one point I lived in a share house in Japan with hundreds of people, more than 200 people, and there was pretty much everybody in Japan was using MacBooks. I almost only saw MacBooks, and people. Sometimes I would do programming in the living room area, so people know I was doing programming and stuff. And only once somebody asked me for help with their computer, and it was on a Windows machine. And it's like, I think that's the only time I saw a Windows machine. Everyone's using Macs, and it's like, yeah, they're far more reliable. There's no blue screen of death. Things do crash. Like it does have its own problems. I'm just saying, Windows to me is far less reliable. And so I now have had three. I've used Windows. I use Windows, Mac, Linux. But in the last few years now, 3 times I have a Windows system that after an update would not boot. And 3 times. But this last third time, which just happened today or yesterday or whatever, I'm at fault, I suppose, because so what happened yesterday is I was relaxing, and again, like, I'm kind of thinking I'm done with Windows because of these stupid pop-ups about Xbox Live. I'm like, and just pop-ups. I do not like pop-ups. So I'm thinking maybe I'm done with it. I've got another computer that I'm thinking. So I was thinking, like, should I install Windows 11? I'm not really sure. I don't know. And I was thinking maybe I'll install Linux. I don't know. I've been thinking about it. So anyway, yesterday I was just relaxing, using my phone. My computer was on, and out of nowhere, my computer is restarting. I wasn't even near the computer. I didn't tell it to restart. And you know what it's doing? It's installing the update. Now, I understand that you can turn off these automatic updates things. I don't want to, because Microsoft does have security problems, and those regular updates are going to help it from a security point of view. So I don't want to never be updating. And it was acceptable to me that when I would start the computer, sometimes it would install an update. What is not cool to me is sometimes I would shut down the computer, and instead it would shut down, but it would then restart and install an update and then be running. So one time last year, I shut down the computer, and then I went to Tokyo for a month or two, and I came back and the computer was still on because it had restarted and installed an update. And it does it without asking. I said, shut down. Okay, it shuts down. And I walked out, like, it's really not acceptable. But I would take the concession. I would compromise a bit and say, well, when I start the computer, you occasionally install an update. I'm okay with that. I haven't gone down the road of just eliminating those. But what it did here is, out of the blue, just start restarting on its own. I'm not cool with that. I'm not cool with that. So I should not be a slave to my technology. The technology should be my slave, not the other way. I got angry and I ripped the cord out while it was restarting. Now it doesn't boot. So the third time, so to be fair, that's okay. I'm cool with that. I know, I ripped the cord out. Now it shouldn't fail to boot. Sometimes power goes out or whatever. In my opinion, it should have a kind of a recovery method or something so that this doesn't happen. But I'm not going to blame them for that. I ripped the power cord out while I was restarting, while I was probably installing an update, and now it doesn't boot. But the blessing that happened, I forgot that I have Linux on the system, because it was like 4 or 5 years ago that I put Linux into. So I had been dual booting and forgot that I was even dual booting. Um, and so today I went to turn on the computer thinking, I knew that I had pulled the plug on it. So I thought like there might be a problem here. It might not boot, but I turned it on and oh, I was so happy. I was so surprised and happy. It booted into Linux. I was like, oh yeah, I was dual booting. I have Linux on the system. If I had known that, I would have been using it. I'd totally forgotten. And so this blessing in disguise, yeah, I was so angry yesterday. I ripped the power cord out. And, well, I'm on Linux again. Now it's Arch Linux, and I have not installed an update for years. So updating, I'm not going to update it. I'm going to avoid updating it. But I'll just start, I'll start looking through the Windows data, extract all my data, then wipe all that data out, probably install. I'd actually like to use Debian or something that's more, you know, Arch Linux is this rolling release where you have to continually keep updating and stuff. But anyway, so, and, you know, this is the third time. Okay, my fault this time, I'll say, I don't know. But the other two times, I had gone like 6 months without updating Windows, and I updated Windows, and it wouldn't boot anymore. So, like this experience that I had had as a teenager and a kid, this experience of Windows being super unreliable, well, in my opinion, it's still true. And I've watched people stream, like streaming Call of Duty or something, and then out of nowhere, blue screen of death. It's crazy to me. It's such unreliable garbage. It's unbelievable. And you know this stuff about pop-ups. When I first used Linux as my primary computer, maybe like 5 years ago, or no, it was 6 or 7 years ago or something. Oh, I was so happy that there's just no pop-ups. And when you think about it, you have to implement the pop-up thing, you know, like low battery, you haven't backed up for, you know, X amount of time, there's a update available, and, you know, Windows, like random pop-ups informing you of whatever random stupid crap. Mac, Apple, Mac, they do this stuff too. I just, if I buy a new computer or whatever, you have the initial setup, I want an option. Do you want pop-ups? Yes? No? I click no, no pop-ups. Like it's not that complicated. Like zero, actually zero. Cold turkey, none. It's not that crazy. And if you install Linux and you install i3, guess what? No freaking pop-ups. Like it's, I want to say that it's, if you let's say install Arch Linux, vanilla Arch Linux yourself, I want to say that the pop-ups aren't even possible, but that's not entirely true. Like if you're using a window manager like i3, there's stuff there for pop-ups, but it's so refreshing just to not have them. I feel like I've been manipulated and gaslit into believing that pop-ups are important just because like it's you're not given a choice. Like with Windows and Mac, like you're gonna have these pop-ups. You don't get a choice about it. You know, like Microsoft, oh, we're gonna put Copilot on your system. Are we gonna ask you? No, we know better. We know better than you what you want in your system. That's kind of the attitude. It's like coming out of an abusive relationship, and it's like, oh my God, like the way I was thinking before was wrong. It doesn't have to be like that. So I don't know. So anyway, so I guess I'm back on Linux, which I'm happy about. Stuff like Roblox doesn't work on Linux. Okay, whatever. I don't know. Like, I don't want to get into it. You know, part of why I was sort of on the fence about installing Linux is I have some issues with Linux as well. Nothing's perfect, okay? But anyway, it's just refreshing, and I'm glad that I don't know. Today was like a happy little accident, a little happy little miracle, a la Bob Ross, la Bob. So that's it. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to go on. I could rant about this stuff all day, about technology and programmers and bad software and all this stuff. But I'm gonna, yeah, go with Linux for a bit. OBS works on it just fine. The vertical, I want to do vertical streaming. So there's a plugin for OBS, but I'm on Arch Linux and everything. Let's see. It might be a little complicated. I'll try to install the plugin for the vertical streaming. Thing is, like, I don't want to update the system because it's been years. It's going to be pretty... I would rather just reinstall Linux and start from scratch than try to update something that's not been up. An Arch Linux install that hasn't been updated for several years, that's tough. I mean, 6 months to a year is... You can have problems, but it's doable. But 3 or 4 years, even like maybe... Yeah, I think it's been 3 or 4 years, maybe even 5. Anyway, yeah, just random update. I don't know. Let me know what you think. Have a good one. Bye.